Hello, welcome to Treasures of Knowledge with Kimberley. This is a Come Follow Me companion to your studies of the Old Testament, and this episode is on Genesis 1 and 2, Moses 2 and 3, and Abraham 4 and 5. We are going to cover 5 points, and that is the God of the Old Testament, the 7-day creation, man being created in God's image, Adam's helpmeet, and 5th, I'll share with you some advice from Aunt Wendy, aka Wendy Nelson, aka President Nelson's wife. Before we get started, I would ask that you share this channel with somebody that you know is interested in learning about the Old Testament this year. Let's get started on point number 1. And let us remember that the Old Testament is a compilation of writings from many prophets. And sometimes the prophets had scribes, and sometimes it's just scribes writing what the prophets have written. Then you have historians that have a play in the writing of these records, and you have composers that are collecting the records, and you have many translations into different languages, and then you have the compounded issue of this being a record over hundreds and thousands of years. And keeping this all in mind, it can add up and lead to some confusion on the nature of God, of the God of the Old Testament. Also keep in mind that Jesus has many names and plays many roles. And one of the names we know him as is the Father of this world, because God delegated the creation of this world to Jesus Christ. And I'd like to share 3 scriptures with you that help illustrate this. The first one is found in Isaiah 45, verses 11. And it says, "Thus saith the Lord, the Holy One of Israel, and his Maker, ask me things to come concerning my sons, and concerning the work of my hands, command ye me. I have made the earth, and created man upon it. I, even my hands, have stretched out the heavens, and all their host have I commanded." Then in Exodus 3, verse 14, God commands Moses to go into Egypt, and he asks God, "Who should I tell the children of Israel hath sent me?" And God responds, Tell them that I am hath sent thee." And then in John 8:58, when the scribes and Pharisees bring the woman caught in adultery to Jesus, they have this exchange of words. And Jesus says that I share with you words from my Father. And the scribes and Pharisees say that we have Abraham of our father. And then Jesus then says, if Abraham were your father, you would follow his words. And then he continues to say that Abraham joyed to see his day. And the scribes and Pharisees then exclaim, "How do you know Abraham?" And he says, "Before Abraham was, I am." Well, this incites the scribes and Pharisees quite a bit at this point in time. But Jesus has just declared that he was the God of the Old Testament. Point number 2, talking about the creation. And it's interesting, in Abraham 3 and 2 Peter 3, it talks about God's time. And it says that one day to God is like 1,000 of man's years. If we extrapolate that out a little bit, we could say an hour of God's time is almost 42 years for man. That's kind of crazy to think about, isn't it? Well, in the creation, we know it took 6 days to create, and on the 7th day, God rested. Now, many years ago, I wanted to put a family home evening lesson together for my children, and I got pictures for each of the days, and I realized that Moses and Abraham, along with Genesis, had slightly varying stories of what was created on what day. And so I choose not to get caught up in this and just realize God took 6 days to create the world and rested on the 7th day. And many times I think about this creation process and think, if God delegated the creation to Jesus, I wonder, were we all put on committees to help in this process? And I think to myself, if so, I'm sure I was on several committees. I love nature so much that I'm sure I was on the birds, the butterflies, the flowers, and the sands of the sea committees. I have a sand collection from all around the world. And I just love it. And I look at this collection in awe and marvel over God's creations. We should enjoy the beauty that God has put on this earth for us a little more. Well, so in the 6 days of creation, God took matter and separated the heavens and the earth and separated the waters from the dry ground. He created the sun and the moon, the night and the day, the stars of the firmament. He created the creatures of the water, the fowl of the air, the creeping and crawling things of the earth, and all for the blessing of mankind. I'd like to share 3 verses of scripture with you that help point out the blessings that these creations were meant for. We'll first turn to Doctrine and Covenants 59, and I'll read some of those verses to you too. And it goes on to say that the herb and the good things of the earth were intended for food and raiment, for houses and barns, both to please the eye and to gladden the heart. And they were meant to be used sparingly and in thanksgiving. Additionally, the beasts and the fowls of the air were ordained for man's use sparingly and in thanksgiving. These blessings are also tied to what we call the word of wisdom, which is also found in the Doctrine and Covenants 89. And there are additional blessings tied to these things, and I'll read those to you now. And all saints who remember to keep and do these sayings will receive health in their navel, marrow to their bones, shall find wisdom and great treasures of knowledge, shall run and not be weary, and walk and not faint. The point I'd like to share with you on man being created in God's image is to bring you back to those creations. And we are told that God created the grass, the trees, the fruit, and that he commanded them to multiply in their own kind. He did so with the creatures of the water, the fowls of the air, the creeping and crawling things. He commanded to multiply after their own kind. He told man and woman to multiply after their own kind. And as we turn to Genesis, it's very hard for me to doubt the corporeal nature of God as we read from the first book of the Old Testament that God says man was created in his own image. All right, well, point number 4 that we'll use today is the helpmeet God creates for Adam. And one of the other things that the scriptures say about the creation is once Adam was formed, then Adam named all of God's creation. I just think that's kind of cool. Well, then God creates his crowning jewel and gives Adam a helpmeet. God says that man was not meant to be alone. He creates his helpmeet, bone of his bone and flesh of his flesh. Whether this is literal or figurative, it sure is beautiful either way. Then he commands them to multiply and replenish the earth, and that they should strive to be one. Now, how beautiful this is. As we work to become one with our spouses, we create a beautiful environment to bring children into this world, to help and support them as they learn and grow. Well, becoming one is much easier said than done, and this leads me to my 5th point today, and that is on the advice that Aunt Wendy shares on love and marriage. Quite possibly the best advice I've ever heard on the subject. I will share a link with you below so that you can quickly access this, and may the words that she shares with you bless you, and that you will work to implement them in your lives. Thank you for sharing this time with me. I look forward to joining you on our next episode.